A Guide to Vault Treasure Hunting, the video. Author, Sandy1. I have compiled a good list of real treasure markers that lead to and mark treasure vaults and storages. Nobody ever gave me any information that ever led me to a treasure, that is why I am sharing. I don't want anybody else to have to go through over half their adult lives to collect this information like I had to. The United States government, as well as most of the state governments, deny the existence of Spanish treasure. So who are we to argue with or try to prove them wrong? As they say, ignorance is bliss. This is dedicated to the young treasure hunters who have tried but can't get any of this information through any other sources. The first thing I want to mention is that not all markers are Spanish. There are many much older markers that you will encounter in the field. The Spanish knew about these markers and even put their own markers among them. These ancient markers are generally oversized in every way, in other words huge. Any markers having to do with Christianity such as the cross, Jesus, devil etc., are most definitely European. As well as animal markers specific to Africa such as the elephant and maned lion. The markers I will be talking about will be on the smaller side. The Spanish did make large markers at the beginning of their time in the New World. As time went on into the 1700s and 1800s, they progressively got smaller, down to 100-pound rock in many cases. The best way to know if the Spanish were in your area of the country is if you have found stone-carved, not glyphs, actual stone-carved turtles, then the Spanish or priests were there. The best signs to look for to know you're in a treasure area, besides turtles, are certain types of triangles, the types I will be showing, as well as owls and hearts. Generally finding these types of markers means you are in a treasure area. I will not be mentioning any Bible verses at all, I have never needed them, and even though the old code that I will be using has holy symbolism for animals, as well as holy distances, it has no Bible verses. I have never seen anything even remotely resembling information that led to a treasure in the form of a Bible verse. I am not a believer in dowsing at all. I have seen people waste their lives trying to find specific treasures with dowsing and never get any closer to the treasure. I wanted to mention this due to the fact that people who have asked for my help wanted to waste my time with dowsing a map, or even messing around with it in the field. The markers are there to be found, and you don't need dowsing for that. I am a serious vault treasure hunter and not at all interested in dowsing, mining or metal detecting, unless the detecting is used to locate and verify where the treasure is in the vault. To start out we need some history of why the treasures even exist, so here is a brief summary of the reason for these treasures. It all starts with a revolt. The reason for the revolt. The Spanish conquest of the Americas began with two renowned kidnappings for ransom. In 1519 in Tenochtitlan, now Mexico City, the Aztec Emperor Montezuma was invited to lodge with the Spaniards under the command of Hernán Cortés and then was held for ransom. Montezuma offered to fill a large room once with gold and twice with silver in return for his freedom. This enormous ransom was duly paid, along with a treasure of jewels. However, the Spaniards, history is unclear on this point, either executed or allowed Montezuma to be killed during an uprising by the Aztecs that started due to brutal mass assassinations of Aztec nobles by the Spanish. Yet again in 1531 the Spanish conquistadors under Francisco Pizarro seized the Inca Emperor Atahualpa during a negotiating session, slaughtering many nobles and taking the emperor hostage. Pizarro agreed to release the emperor for a ransom payment of a room 22 by 16 feet filled with gold and silver. When the Incas complied and filled the room, Pizarro fabricated charges that Atahualpa was plotting a counter-revolution and publicly executed the emperor anyway. Many natives were tortured and killed in order to find any knowledge of gold and silver. In 1545, silver ore was discovered in Peru and it changed the way Spain extracted the treasures of the New World. Up to that point all precious metals were obtained by stealing it from the natives, as well as many more years of looting other ancient places in what is now the USA. The Spanish were thieves and butchers. After 1545, mining became the main method for the acquisition of precious metals from the Americas. Once mining for silver became big business in the colonies, gold took second place as the metal of choice. In 1546 silver mines were discovered in Mexico, ensuring two major sources of silver for Spain. Once mining became more common, tens of thousands of Native Americans and natives from both South and North America as well as Africans were enslaved to work the Spanish mines. Over time the Spanish moved northward and started mining in North America, the area that would eventually become the USA. The reason the treasures are still here. From 1810 to 1821 was the Mexican Revolution. Father Miguel Hidalgo gathered the Indians, peons, the enslaved and the Mexicans to revolt against Spain's rule. During this 11-year period the Mexicans won their independence from Spain. Spain was forced to recall its soldiers from the northerly areas, USA, where they were protecting mining communities, because Mexico had won its independence and would kill any Spaniards on sight after 1821. Thousands of treasures large and small were hidden by miners with the intention of returning one day to recover what they hid. The king had many mines that were worked by slaves and had accumulation rooms for ease of pickup that were not able to be retrieved. The mines that were owned by individuals, not the king, had to pay taxes, 10 to 20% to the king for what was mined. These taxes were put in accumulation rooms as well, many were never retrieved. In 1846 through 1848 was the Mexican-American War. America took Mexico's northernmost lands and thousands of treasure locations with the land, so even the Mexicans only retrieved a small amount of these treasures during the short time of their independence from Spain until America came along, 1821 to 1848, 27 years. However, the Mexicans left many markers to relocate the treasures later, for themselves of course, not letting America in on their little secret. Now to show my point about how there is a Catholic theme, here are some pictures. This is a statue of Jesus Christ at a very old and large Spanish accumulation, treasure room site. He is looking directly towards the treasure, notice the robes and sandals. Here is a shadow devil that is looking at the same treasure as the statue of Jesus above from a different angle. Notice his horns and tattered cape. Here is a large Catholic cross. And here is a shadow 3 made by the Catholic clergy from the 1700s. These are all Catholic and Spanish treasure markers. The Jesuits were into witchcraft. Much of what is at treasure sites have to do with witchcraft, but the basis for their beliefs was still in Christianity, and yes, I have had several ghostly experiences while digging, as have most successful treasure hunters. I remember a story Kenworthy told me about hearing a wind-up music box the entire time he was inside a vault. Here is a picture of a witch that is at one of these treasure sites. A friend in the Northwest took this picture. There have been different people, groups involved throughout the history of these treasures, the Spanish, priests, church, the old Mexicans who won their independence, the Sentinels and our very own government. I will touch on these different groups as I go along. You will find markers that have been built or planted throughout the centuries marking and remarking these treasures all the way up to today. The big difference between the Mexican, Sentinel markers compared to the Spanish, church markers is permanence, meaning that the Spanish, church took no chances of anything being accidentally moved offline. They made the markers permanent in a few different ways. 1. They cut into bedrock, or used a boulder that was so heavy it couldn't be moved. 2. They buried markers with a large part of the marker underground and a small amount showing above ground. 3. They were redundant, using multiple markers to mark the treasure storages in case any one of them were destroyed or lost for any reason. As far as the Mexicans, Sentinels, they use cairns, rocks, saguaros, trees, stumps, logs and whatever else they would recognize to help them relocate a site and the entrance easily. They mapped out their own markers to the entrances, or used them as assistance markers to help find the permanent Spanish markers. This remarking is going on to this very day by the Sentinels. I have used trees and saguaros before at treasure sites, but there is a reason I will keep them to a bare minimum. Anything that was set up by the Spanish or priests absolutely were required to be permanent, which means, nothing that can die. Anything that can die was only used as assist markers. The important old alignments were always done in stone. The Sentinels started really using these trees and cactus etc. after Spain's rule to assist in helping themselves find the old markers as well as the caches. So yes, these trees and cactus do go to caches, but they are not the original markers to them, and understanding the meaning of the Sentinels markers, because many times they only used a map from them, is much more difficult than understanding the old stone markers. To give an example, you find a saguaro or a tree alone near a treasure with an owl carving on it. This tree is exactly 45 compass degrees at exactly 13 feet to the treasure. Now how do we know this? We don't. Only the Sentinels who planted it and mapped it out know its meaning, so this is how they would follow it. Their map says look for this owl on a tree or cactus in this area, then go 45 degrees at 13 feet to the entrance. Now how do we get that information in the field? Again, we don't. There is no rhyme or reason or pattern to follow with trees and cactus. This is because there are no kings or church laws for the Sentinels to follow, unlike the original permanent markers where there are always patterns that can be learned and reused at different sites. After finding multiple dig spots, I have measured back to trees and cactus at sites, and the one thing they are known to do is use holy compass degrees and distances, but the only way to know this is after you have found the dig spot with the permanent boulder, / carved markers, then reverse engineer the Sentinel's tree or cactus and single rock markers from the dig spot. This is also why the Sentinels recheck the different treasure sites to this day, because over time, the trees and cactus die off and they have to replant new ones, but they do it on new lines and distances that they map out for themselves. Whenever you look for these treasure sites, make sure of two things. 1. That the treasure site is within 20 miles of where you live. 2. That you don't have to hike very far from your vehicle. The reason is that you will need to travel back and forth to a treasure site multiple times for taking pictures, looking for markers, etc., so there is no need to waste huge amounts of effort and time when there are literally treasure sites you can just about drive right up to out there. Yes, there really are that many. I am going to start with treasure markers you look for at a distance. In the desert you can see for many miles, so the Spanish took advantage of this and made many sun and shadow signs to draw you to a mountain that had treasures on it. One of the first types of markers, in many cases on a mountain or seen while in a canyon going to these treasures, is the hole. The hole can be seen from miles away, if large, while others are only meant to be seen from a wash or trail and are fairly small. These holes with light, / sky showing through them, are set up at the trailhead to a treasure area. Not every trailhead has a hole. Here is a hole that is at the beginning of a mountain range with multiple treasures along it. This particular hole is the eye of a face. I am slightly off the correct angle to show the nose, mouth and chin that are carved on the side ridge, but he is looking towards the storages, or more accurately, towards the storage markers, to the right. So in this case, we go to the right for a couple of miles. Many times the hole is an eye with a carved profile face, while other times it is in the shape of something else such as the outline of an owl, etc. This is going to be one of the most important things I can explain, and I cannot stress this enough. When the Spanish came back to recover the stored treasures, they did not want to have a hard time finding them, so there were certain rules that had to be followed. One of those is that it was easy to find the markers. This basically means no trying to decipher some cliff face with carvings all over it or trying to find some little stone in the middle of nowhere. I am sure you're following the logic here. Think of it this way: could you, or I, go to a foreign country and try to find a 2-inch rock on a mountain that we have never seen, in a country we have never been to? Not a chance in hell. So they mapped out waterways, washes, and tributaries. These were the roads of the time. Then they put up big boulders in these washes, or on the banks, and pointed them in the direction of all kinds of things, such as water, camps, and of course treasure vault, / storages, but only certain markers were for the vault, / storages, and that is what we are going to discuss as we move on. The most important thing to understand is that the important treasure markers are alone, as in all by themselves, or at least really stand out by being oversized, a different color, a shadow sign, or in some way different than the surroundings in order to catch your attention. If for some reason the marker is small, then it will have a large marker next to it to draw your attention to the small marker. Again, these were meant to be very easy to find. Many times markers were only meant to be seen while you were on the trail, so some were put flat on the ground. This is by far and away the hardest part of treasure hunting, relocating the old trails that connected one marker with the next marker, which is almost impossible today, due to the fact that time has erased these old trails. All of these storages and markers are connected by trails, washes and wagon trails. Without the walking trails, burro trails, wagon roads and washes to follow, there would be no hope of the recovery groups ever relocating all the storages. This also includes the boulder markers found at or near the treasures. You have to find the old trails on the hills and walk on them to be able to find and view the treasure markers properly, as that is how each marker is connected, by a trail or a wash. However, on some markers you use a compass to find the next marker. More on that later. They had markers you viewed from long distance, 5 miles out, mid-range, 1 mile to a half-mile out, and close up, to within a couple hundred feet. We are going to work on the long-range ones for now. Most of the carvings that you see everywhere are not for treasure. Only very specific standalone markers that are seen from specific spots while on the road, washes and trails, are actually leading to the treasures. These are the ones I will be covering. Where you are located or standing viewing the markers from is in many cases more important than the marker itself. The next marker you will see in the desert, both made out of rock and sometimes a carved, shadow, but again by itself, not the trail ones, is the X all by itself on the side of a mountain. Anytime you find one of these it means this mountain range holds at least one, or more, storages somewhere along it. These are not for pinpointing, just to tell you to look along this mountain range for more important markers. Here is the simple meaning of the X. Since the 2nd century the Greek letter X was used in different monograms, because it was the first letter of Christ's name. On the large X it confirms, just like the skull, which will be shown shortly, that this is a place of Christ. On the small X's, they are confirmation marks that you are on a holy trail, very similar to finding the carved cross on a rock. Now for the most common of all, the lit-up boulder. These are specifically to call your attention to an area or a mountain. Notice how they are alone as are most of the important markers. Many times to accentuate this lit-up boulder they placed it right below the peak of a mountain. Sometimes they are just on the side of the mountain and angled so they can only be seen when the sun is in the right place. Some light up in the morning, some midday, others in the afternoon. All of these are telling you look at this mountain for more important markers. Here are a few of mine, and all of these have treasure storages near them. Here is another lit-up marker that goes to a major accumulation room right below it. This is only seen at dawn's first light. While looking at a mountain, you see a skull. This is one of the best signs a treasure hunter can find. It always relates to treasure. Finding one of these means you are on a mountain range with treasure buried in it. In most cases multiple caches will be found, as the Spanish and priests kept multiple storages, not keeping all their eggs in one basket. When the skull is made by the Spanish it represents one thing, Golgotha, the place where Jesus was crucified at the Calvary, or, the place of the skull. Here is another skull. Something to look for when finding a full head or skull is a marker or pointer in one of the eyes that tells you which way to go. Since you're looking at it head-on, you are mostly told to go left or right, unless it's a directional arrow. This does not apply to skulls that are on alignments or have other markers around it to follow. This skull has a number 3 just to your left of it made out of rocks. The number 3 is most definitely a clergy number 3, as no other culture used this design. So we know it is from Europe and Catholic, which means during the Spanish era. The number 3s I have shown are the stamp of the Church and also represent the Trinity. Far too many people buy into the belief that these signs and treasures are either gone already or only in the Southwest. Neither of these are true. There are Spanish or priests' treasures across the entire country, and thousands are still in the ground to this day, which is the reason for the Sentinels. When you get a bit closer, within a mile or so from the mountain, you will start finding markers that are more important. Here are a couple of shaft signs, a squared U, that in some cases are found in the ridge line and represent a shaft/storage area. These two are on mountains that are about 10 miles apart. Each one of these markers have multiple storages within a mile of them. These large squared U's are not for pinpointing, but will give you a good section of mountain range to start looking for more important markers. The shaft sign is found at the vault/storage areas as well, but much smaller. More on that later. Notice that these are standalone markers. Most of the markers I show are going to be alone because that is the only way to spot them easily. If they are harder to spot then they had a large marker, or something, that would catch your attention, next to, or close to it. Here is another marker you will see from around a mile out from the mountain. It is the King's Throne. This is always found at major accumulation rooms and always alone. If you see one, then within a mile of it is at least one large treasure storage vault. These thrones do not give you a clue as to where the treasure storages are, just that you need to look for more important markers in the area. This throne, in the saddle of the ridgeline, is next to the Jesus statue I've shown before, and the storage is almost straight down from this throne. This throne, on the ridgeline, is about a half-mile from another storage. The storage is to your right, outside of this picture. Here is another marker you can see from around a mile out from the mountain. This is the vertical line that is designed to show what area to look for storages in while going down the mountain range. Each are separated by at least a half-mile. Some of these lines are huge and can be seen from miles away. The ones I have here are much smaller. There are multiples of these going down this mountain range, because there are multiple storages along this mountain range. These are not for pinpointing, but give you a half-mile area to look at for more important markers. These vertical lines are shallow dugout trenches, and the best way to view them is when the sun is casting a shadow over these trenches, which can be in the morning or late afternoon. Another thing I want to point out is this: just like the markers were supposed to be easy to spot, the storages were meant to be easy to retrieve. If the storage was halfway up a steep cliff, then it was probably a mine originally that they used as a storage as well. The king's vaults always had an easy path into them, even if it was a wagon path on the side of a hill, or just going up a wash to the base of a hill. Many of these storages are down in easily accessible areas close to the base of hills, or next to a wash, that they could get a wagon up to. The smaller caches are always on a trail that the burros could pack in and out if they couldn't get the wagon to them. I try to stay away from rocky cliffs, and you should too, as there are too many chances of a gravity death trap just waiting for you to dig under it. The best treasures to work on are the ones that you will be digging down in the ground with nothing above your head. Even if it is on the side of a sloped hill. Gravity death traps are the #1 death traps out there. For the next step in our journey, we are going to get closer to the mountain, within a half-mile. Now we start looking for standalone large boulders that are up against the base of the mountain, or a little ways up it. These boulders are marking where to look at on the mountain range, and many times the cache is straight up the hill from these boulders, or they are marking the wash to go up next to them, looking for other important markers in the wash as you go. The very best places to look for markers are at the base of hills or in the washes and their banks. Many times the markers that are marking the caches are below, above, or side hill to the storage, as in vertical or horizontal to the hill's slope. Here are a few standalone large boulders. Notice again how they are all alone. This boulder is straight below or downhill from the storage, and has an eagle's head carved on its top. Many times the beginning marker of a site will have an eagle. I have a lot of people who ask me to read the signs on everything from rocks, trees, cactus, etc., and while yes, there are certain images you want to find at a treasure site, these writings, signs I will leave to other experts. What I have found to be far more important are the placement and alignments of boulders and/or rocks, when you are in close proximity of the treasures. A good example is this last eagle head boulder. It tells us absolutely nothing about which way to go, or even what it is there for, but the boulder itself is out of place because of how big it is. Here is where only the people who placed it there knew that it was used to mark a treasure, and that the treasure would be straight up the hill from there. The one thing we do know is that we are viewing this boulder from the correct angle because the eagle head would not be visible from any other angle. This is the case with most of these markers. Only the treasure recovery people knew how to use the markers once they found them. This is especially true with the writing or maps carved on the boulders, due to them being in code, or in many cases just made to lead you on a false trail. Last but not least, sometimes there is just a symbol that is carved into a boulder and the map told them what to do or where to go from the symbol. Here is an example. A Jesuit priest buried 2 mule loads of gold and silver. In his diary he wrote, "Locate the horseshoe carved on a boulder, in a certain area." Then on the 1st of January, at first sunlight, a man standing exactly 5 feet 3 inches stands on top of the boulder with the horseshoe carved into it, and he will cast a shadow onto the location of the buried hoard of gold and silver. So even if we happen to find the horseshoe carved in the boulder, without knowing the details that are in the diary, we have no clue how to use this marker. This is why I don't waste my time with rock maps. Even if they were meant to be read in the field, there would be some unknown code that was only known to the hider of the treasure, and not something we would most likely ever figure out in our lifetimes. This is why the successful treasure hunters use detectors such as ground-penetrating radar, magnetometers, as well as deep-seeking pulse induction detectors. All are very expensive. Be wary of people who say they have broken the codes, maps on the boulders. I have yet to see anybody successfully break the codes, writing on a boulder and have it lead them to a hidden-in-the-ground buried vault. This excludes caves. Some of the carved animal trail markers will point you in a direction to get you close to the treasure areas, but then when you get close, the missing information is only known by the initiated, and not found in the field. Many people will say they deciphered different markers, and it may be true that they could get close, but every one of these people who have been successful in treasure recovery, when it comes to the treasure buried in the ground, not a cave, has ended up using electronics in the end. In other words, the King's recovery people had extra information that is needed to relocate the treasures, which is not shown to us treasure hunters in the field. This is my goal here, to fill in as many of these missing pieces of information as I can that are not shown in the field. Now I am going to show a combination of several very important signs. As you go along the mountain range, a couple things you always want to look for is the vertical line and also the owl. The owl always means there is at least one storage nearby and most likely many more. When you see one of these, look for the washes going up to it and follow them, looking for more markers in the wash, or on its banks. Here is the owl all by itself, circled, and they placed him right next to one of the vertical lines that I had previously discussed. So the vertical line would be seen from a mile away, then when you got closer you would see this owl. There are at least 3 small caches within 100 yards of this owl. Also, there are 2, that I know about, King's vaults as you walk up the wash that is going towards this owl. Down and to the left is the wash, and the vaults. Here is a close-up of the owl, and while you will notice that the overall shape is of an owl, when you zoom in on him, you will find that the upper portion of his body is actually a duck going to the right. The green circle is the entire body of the owl, and the orange arrow is just about touching the beak of the duck, which is the head of the owl as well. I am adding an owl template for people who don't recognize the shape. I am also adding a second owl from a site many miles away, so I can show that these types of owls are a standard simple-shaped owl. Try to familiarize yourself with these owl shapes because these are the markers for treasure vaults. The owls are usually much smaller when you see them close to the treasures. On the later treasure storages, in some cases just a part of the owl is visible, such as half a face, or just the eyes, or just the horns, etc. But I have never ever seen them look towards the treasure. However, they will be aligned to it. More on that later. The older sites have larger owls. As time went on into the 1700s, the owls became smaller, as did most all of the markers. So it wasn't so much about distance from the treasures, as it was more about how old the markers are, when it comes to how large the markers were made. I have seen huge owls very close to treasures at old sites. The triangle can be seen from 3 different locations. 1. When you're looking at the hill from its base. 2. When you are on an old trail on the mountain itself, or 3. While walking up a wash, on the banks of the wash. There are Spanish, church triangles, and Mexican, sentinel triangles. The difference is that the Spanish triangles are permanent, and the Mexican, sentinel triangles are not. The Spanish triangle is found at or near sites, within a couple hundred feet, if and only if it is small, in other words, only under a few feet in size and, usually when really close down to a few inches on a large boulder or permanent bedrock. Here is the kicker, every triangle I have found, other than a cactus or cairn sentinel triangle, has not helped me in any way to locate the treasures. What they have done is located the final markers, or verified the final markers, to the treasures, or they were used as an A-frame alignment rock and not a triangle. More on the A-frame later. It is important to know that when you find a triangle, that is not huge, use my pictures for reference on what size to look for, you are definitely in the immediate area of a treasure. Especially when it is a Mexican, sentinel triangle. The sentinel triangles are made of trees, cairns, saguaros, boulders, and are always close to the treasure, if they are not bigger than 100 feet around, measuring all the legs and adding them all together, usually less than 50 feet around is much more common. Here is a carved triangle made by the Spanish, and is also a bird head looking right, which is the way to go for the more important markers. This one is viewed while walking up a wash, and tells you the trail turns right and out of the wash. There is a storage very nearby here as well. These types of triangles always point out important markers, so they are very important. Notice how this triangle is in a highly visible area. This is because it points to something important that is not so visible. What do you guys say we go on a marker finding journey together? So one day we decide to go out into the beautiful Arizona sunshine and take a look at a simple dam overlook that is state-owned and operated, with maintenance crews that check on it all the time. While we are looking across the lake, we notice something interesting. The short wall in front of us has something that shouldn't be there. So what is it that looks strange about this wall? It would appear that there is a black triangle on the side of the wall pointing out another triangle that is on the flat top, which you would only see if you were looking down over the top of the wall. So the one on the side would be an eye-catcher while the one on the top must be pointing something else out. But first we still need to know if the section of wall with the triangles in it has been replaced at a later date or not. In other words, were the triangles placed long after the wall was built? The answer is yes. I have marked the section of the wall that was re-cemented in. The black arrows are the old cement, and the blue are the new. Notice the color because the old cement is dirty and porous, and the newer cement is much finer textured and cleaner looking. The red arrow is pointing out the triangles. Somehow the Sentinels managed to tear out a section of wall in a state-operated dam overlook, that is being monitored daily, and locked up on holidays, then managed to re-cement a whole section of it in again. Now that we have examined the physical evidence as well as what is completely out of place on this wall, the triangles, we decide it's time to look at the top of this wall, and what do we find? On the section that has been replaced, just a few feet from the triangles, we see some writing in the cement. Here are the signs written in the newer cement, in the proper angle they were meant to be seen from. This code was made by the Spanish or Church to mark and refine treasures, just like the turtle, the duck, the owl, the squared U, etc. All these are part of the old code, and the Sentinels know it very well. Let's break this message down, reading from top to bottom. The S represents the river, so the river is first. The storage, which is the squared U with the heart inside, is representing the treasure, which is on the other side of the river. Because it comes after the river sign. Going a few feet down the wall from the written signs we come to the triangle, which I show we find the direction to go. So now we shoot out through the alignment stone separate from the triangle. This stone tells you which way to go out of the triangle. It is not dead on, the line would be slightly to the right of this single rock. They actually used a compass at this point, which when I checked it out turned out to be 111 degrees over 2. I will show that shortly. What this means is that the Sentinels had to go along this wall with a compass until they aligned 111 degrees to a marker on the opposite bank of this lake, then build this triangle at the right spot for it to be on a holy degree. There is only a direction given by this triangle, no distance, which means you go in the compass degree until you come to the next marker. Besides being holy degrees, 111 English feet is a favorite distance for the Sentinels as well. So we look over in the direction the wall triangle is pointed, across the lake, and wonders never cease. Another triangle, Spanish this time. This triangle has a diamond tip telling you which way to go out of it. So again the Sentinels used a helper triangle to assist in finding the old markers. This second one I made for perspective of how to use the wall triangle, to get over to the Spanish triangle, circled in red. So where do we go from this Spanish triangle? Here is what the Spanish triangle points to, a doorway with a cross in the middle of it. This is just a mock-up of a real doorway that has the actual treasure in it, which just happens to be under the lake. This was put up high so they would be able to find the treasure site while on the opposite bank, which is where the trail was. There are other carvings down to the right as well. These markers have been underwater a long time, as you can tell by the white stain on the rocks. I am sure that the reason the wall triangle went to the Spanish triangle instead of to the doorway is because you could see the Spanish triangle above the water level, but the door was never visible until the water level went down so low recently. You guys would not believe how many of these storages were covered up with water when dams were built across the country, because most of the big storages were built on the banks of rivers for ease of locating, so of course when they were dammed up many vaults were flooded over. The lesson I had hoped to show here is that the Sentinels are very real today and they are located everywhere, remarking and guarding these treasures, especially online. And second is that the triangles only lead to other markers. There is zero chance of recovering this treasure because it's in a state park. Many of the treasures have been protected by wilderness areas, state trust lands, forestry areas, national parks, etc. These treasures are not lost to the Sentinels, just to us, but I hope to change that. Hopefully you guys realize that the Sentinels who tore down that wall and rebuilt it in a state park surely had permission to do so. Which should give you guys a clue as to who the Sentinels are, or at least working with. Here is a Sentinel-planted saguaro triangle which is marking the big white boulder below, as well as to the cache. The Sentinels always gave themselves a shortcut that you will never figure out in the field, they put it on their map. However, you can figure out if it is a real triangle with a compass and a tape measure, because there are certain measurements and degrees that were used all the time. Here are some very common degrees that are used: cardinals NESW, 39, 45, 60, 75, 111, 120, distances can be in varas, or English feet, 33 English inches per vara. This triangle is viewed from a major wash and is upon the side of its bank. Here we have a white triangle pointing out another doorway. This doorway is a mock-up of the entrance that is nearby, and in front of the doorway is a sentinel cactus triangle, which will lead the Sentinels to the cache spot, via a map, but will only lead us to another marker close by using a compass degree off the cactus triangle. The original Spanish intent was to show that there is an entrance close by here, and since they could not show the entrance itself, they made mock-ups to represent the entrances in some cases. After going back at a different time, I was able to capture the trail going by this doorway. Notice how the white triangle pointer is at the beginning of this trail. Here is a Mexican, Sentinel-made cairn triangle that goes directly south just off-center, like a slingshot, through the widest leg of the triangle to a major boulder marker, which in turn is going to the treasure. This one is viewed while walking straight up one of the vertical lines like the ones I talked about before. The reason why the Spanish and Sentinels as well as the old Mexicans put these triangles up in highly visible places, was so they could easily spot the areas again, and then relocate the old markers to the caches. The Sentinels always made a shortcut from their triangle with either an alignment, or a compass degree and distance that they had written down on their map which located the dig spot as well as the old marker. Cairns are different than a triangle because they can be seen as a single marker and are made by the Mexicans or Sentinels. Sometimes they are in pairs of two also for an alignment. So, here we are moseying along an old trail, and we come across a piled-up rock marker, cairn. So what do we think? It's probably somebody's mining claim marker. So how do we tell if it is something that the Mexicans or Sentinels put up, instead of your average old mining claim marker? Obviously the first thing to do is examine it for something telling us this is Mexican or Sentinel made. The first thing we notice is it has a white eye-catcher top on it, so when we get over this top rock we see that it is actually a pyramid, and down to the right we have a prominent rock pointer, a triangle, which happens to be pointing the way to go. So we whip out our trusty compass and guess what, the pointed triangle rock is pointing very close to 60 degrees, so it's time to walk on this line until we find something else that is worth investigating. Remember to use 15-degree compass increments on the old markers and you will need to adjust your declination on your compass to compensate for magnetic north drift over the years since these were made. Well, we have a very short walk as a matter of a fact, we only go 41.25 feet, or 15 varas. And what do we find but a compass boulder, which just as the name implies, goes to another marker with a compass degree. Here is the same alignment going from the compass rock back to the cairn. Notice how the triangle on the cairn points towards the compass rock and camera. There are three things to look for in a cairn: 1 is a prominent pointer rock, 2 is a carved marker within the pile, and 3 is a eye-catcher or different color rock in the pile. Here is a different cairn, and as you will notice there is a turtle head as one of the rocks. Here is another cairn, and you will notice again it has a prominent pointer rock which tells us to turn right. This one happens to be a turtle with his head pointing the way to go. It is very common to see a cairn associated with, or even as a turtle, due to the fact that turtles are associated with the treasures. I have also seen them as birds as well. Here is a typical cairn that the Sentinels leave at your entrance point when you have been doing something that upsets them. This is a cairn that is the shell of a turtle with the head separated from the body. I have seen this 4 different times, in both Arizona and New Mexico, one of these turtles was built at my entrance point while I was digging and I saw it on the way out. The others were while I was gone and they checked where I had dug with a dog. So yeah, I have had some close calls. Here is an example of the size of an early Spanish alpha rock. This is a pretty common size for many of the old alphas around here. 1600 markers. I do know for sure this is Spanish as I found the corner post claim marker, and if you look in the left lower part of the picture you will see the king's throne, which has a wedge pointer pointing at the alpha rock. You can see the chisel marks on the back of the chair. These large markers were not used in later years, the markers I have been showing on this thread were. This is larger than an SUV. Here is the Omega about 2 miles up the canyon from the Alpha. The Omega is the right boulder, at the right time of day and year, it casts a shadow that is important on the left flat one. The left flat one, when the shadow is not on it, is used as an eye-catcher for the sun to reflect off of as well, a dual purpose. Here is a Spanish corner post marker from the very old days when they were first here. These are not used in later mining claims. This is about 100 yards from the last Omega Boulder I posted. This is how you walk up on it. And here it is close up, notice the duck I circled, which has feet and all. The duck is the verification of it being Spanish, he is walking and or pointing to the ongoing trail to the right. The reason this is in the shape of a doorway is because it is a mock-up of an entrance that they would find after leaving here. The Spanish used a doorway as a representation of the real entrance, so they knew this was the trail to the real doorway, vault where the treasure was buried. Here is the third view of this marker. If you will notice the hole is in the shape of a head, the hole can be any kind of shape, an owl is a very common shape made out of the outline of a hole as well. If you look through this hole you will see a rock through it. Some holes are meant to be seen through to view other markers. This is a very rare sight, if you find something like this it will probably be a once-in-a-lifetime deal. After leaving here I followed the trail, the duck pointed out, with markers all along it on the ridgeline, for a little over a mile, until coming to a black cliff, and that said stop. It was right below that I found a dolmen which is for a burial. This dolmen aligned with a sentinel planted saguaro cactus at 123 degrees, which went to the spot to dig. It sounds simple but it's not, and there were other caches along the trail before the big one as well. Here is the final treasure spot. You can't see the exact spot because I am standing at it taking the picture at the markers. The black-faced cliff, with the dolmen and the saguaro alignment. This was my very first treasure hunting area, going on a story of a guy who found a door on this mountain, and yes I found that too, with a lightning bolt next to it. Here is the doorway, behind the tree circled, with the lightning bolt circled. I guarantee that most of you will never find anything like this in the field. This is one of those places that I had spirits actually interact with me while I was digging. Just for the record, I am not in any way whatsoever religious. I am the last person to believe in spirits, but this is what happened to me while I was digging. The spirits sounded like hundreds of voices trying to break through a barrier, yelled at me for a few seconds, then after stopping, a huge black raven came down and almost hit me in the head, then landed on a rock 3 feet in front of me, turned around and started cawing at me. Then a small bird flew up the canyon and landed under the raven's open wing and started chirping at me with the raven still cawing at me. They were so close I could have reached out and touched them, then they both stopped. And the voices yelling at me came back even louder. At this point I decided to leave. This location had others digging at it back in the 20s and they dropped all of their tools there as well when they left. They probably had the same thing happen to them. This is not the only treasure site I have had something happen to me at, it was always while I was digging. Here is another one at a different site. Back in the mid-2000s, me and my partner were digging in what turned out to be a death trap. Anyways, as we were in the hole, my partner mentioned a boulder and said it looked like a dog, but not quite. Then I realized that it looked like a wolf, so I was in the process of saying, "That's a wolf." All I got out was the W, and the thing actually howled just like a real wolf. I looked at my partner and asked what was that, and he said, "You know exactly what that was." This last ghost story almost killed me. First thing to understand is that it was a beautiful blue sky day out, no clouds. The second thing is, I know what jets breaking the sound barriers as well as what dynamite and or blasting sounds like. The area I was treasure hunting in was all cliffs and I was down on one of these little ledges trying to sweep away a crack that looked like an entrance, while I was sweeping, barely keeping my balance on a 2-foot wide ledge with a 50-foot straight down drop-off that I was trying not to fall off of, it happened. Out of nowhere, an extremely loud thunder cracking sound that lasted for several seconds, much longer than dynamite or a sonic boom. This sound was coming from inside the mountain right under my feet. I started to fall because I jumped up from a crouched position and just managed to grab the cliff face. Back on topic. Now we have looked at and located many markers that are viewed from long distance, 5 miles out, and mid-range, 1 to half a mile, away from the mountain. So where do we go from here? Markers that are within 100 yards. It's time to walk the washes. The one surefire way to find good markers to a treasure storage are in a wash, because that is where the trails either start out of, or the trail crosses and always has a marker where the trail crosses at. Many of the king's storages are within a couple 100 feet of a wash, on the bank, and will always have a large boulder that will lead to the storage, either right in the wash, or on its bank. This boulder needs to be a certain image to know if it is a treasure storage marker, and it must be viewed while walking up the wash. Here is the first image that you need to know when you see it in a wash. The duck. This duck was found while walking the wash going towards the owl and duck combination I posted earlier. You turn left out of the wash here, going the way he is looking. Notice how he is blocking the entire wash, so not only is it an obvious sign for treasure, they also made it hard to pass him by, making it easy to find, or at least hard to ignore, just like all the other markers that are important. In this case it goes to an alignment boulder about 100 feet away. I will be getting into alignments in a little bit. Ducks don't look directly at the dig spot. This duck means one thing: turn left to go to the treasure area. Other than the overall image of the duck, you don't read anything else on the rock at all. These ducks go to king's vaults. They only go to king's vaults. If you look at the owl or turtle in contrast to the duck, they are at most caches, but the duck is specific to just the king's storages. 99% of the king's vaults were on the banks of a wash, usually within a couple 100 feet, at the most, from the wash. What you should look for in a marker. I single out the specific markers that will tell you that you're going to a treasure and give a direction. Those are the two absolute mandates in treasure hunting in order to locate the treasure. I will be showing them one by one as we go. It is extremely important out of all the millions of rocks, boulders and carvings out there that we pick and choose just the ones that are actually giving both verification that it goes to treasure, and a direction to go. These are generally standalone markers, or pointed out by an eye-catcher. This is why I ignore most signs, not that I don't see them, but they are nothing more than distractions when all you're trying to do is follow a trail to a treasure. While many of the markers have traits that I have referred to in the field, most markers are symbolic of some spiritual meaning, such as the snake representing Satan, etc. By far and away the most important part of an animal marker is its head, which is why most of the markers you will find have no body, just a head. The first thing to always look for is the eye, which way it is looking. The second is the mouth. It could be open with something in it, or a beak, or nose, pointing a direction to go, but only if it is a specific type of animal. Here is the meaning and symbolism of the diamond shape. This first picture which I had shown before is a Jesus Christ statue that is about 100 feet tall. If you climb up the back or left side of this statue, you come to a cave which was a shrine for the priest. You will notice it is in the shape of a diamond. This just happens to be where Jesus's heart would be. So why is the diamond shape in the heart of Jesus? Jesus's wounds, particularly the wound in his side, became flattened, turned into emblems. A one-dimensional diamond shape formed part of the divine heraldry. The wounds and instruments were often formed to make up a coat of arms of Jesus. The wounds were sites of devotion, literal openings for the believer to enter Christ. So far we have seen a duck that turns us out of the wash towards a treasure. Now I am going to show another set of markers that I found while walking up a completely different wash 100 miles from the last duck. This is a cluster of markers. Starting with the black rectangle we have a king's throne. The pink rectangle is the heart sitting in the throne. The green rectangle is the hummingbird. The yellow square is what I call a storage turtle head. These always relate to a storage. The blue square is a shadow Indian head. And last but not least, is the red rectangle which is a duck head. Telling us in no uncertain terms that this goes to a king's storage. The hummingbird, from what I have seen, will always point towards the treasure. He is looking to your right, and is usually put together with the storage turtle head. The shadow Indian head's nose is pointing the way to go. The long pointed heart lobe points the way to go, and the duck is looking in the direction to go as well. These all go to the right, all taking you to a large standing boulder on the opposite side of the wash, and that standing boulder goes to the treasure. On top of all that, the Sentinels were kind enough to give me a helping hand by putting up this cactus triangle going to the same standing boulder. One more very important piece of information. Even though I am viewing the cluster of markers from the wash, I am not on the trail. The actual trail comes across the hills and goes through this wash above where I took this picture from, so my point is that the monument builders were required to make the marker viewable while walking up the wash, and not from the trail. The standing boulder that everything went to could be viewed from the trail or the wash. Continuing on with markers that you see while going up washes. Here is another storage turtle head that I found while walking and climbing up a very steep vertical line, basically a man-made or enhanced wash. The vertical line I went up is similar to the vertical line distance markers I showed previously, but much larger. Also, the large boulder that is at the base of the hill, shown previously, goes to this storage as well. This storage turtle head has a sticking out, white, angry-looking duck head just to the left of it, verifying this is a king storage. The treasure is to the right, so as you will notice, the duck is not looking towards the treasure in this case. When we zoom in on the mouth area of this storage turtle head, you will see a hummingbird looking to the right, towards the treasure. If you look closely you will see that the wing of the hummingbird is actually a duck head looking down left, again, not looking at the treasure. This is why I say that the small markers that are important will be accompanied by a large marker that is easy to find and/or spot. The hummingbird, when it is combined with a larger marker, always looks in the direction of the treasure, not necessarily dead at it though. The hummingbird is part of a South American Christian tradition, in the Andes, that celebrates the resurrection of Christ and Easter. This comes from an observation called torpor, which is the hummingbird coming back to life after a deep hibernation, which looks as if it comes back from the dead, just as Jesus did. And again, the Sentinels were very nice and understanding enough to leave a nice cairn triangle for me to follow to the major boulder marker that all these markers went to. Aren't they just the best? The storage turtle head is just above and out of this cairn picture, on the cliff behind them. I wanted to show a storage turtle head that is different, not only in appearance, but location. This particular smiling full-faced storage turtle head was found on an old wagon trail, a couple 100 feet up the side of a hill. It is flat on the ground, which means, unless you were on the wagon trail looking down at it, you could not see it. These are rare. There was a large boulder on the other side of this same wagon trail that stopped you, and this big boulder went to the spot to dig as well. I will explain more on that later. On this next picture, we zoom in on his eyebrow and notice that we have yet another hummingbird, which just so happens to be pointed in the direction of another treasure vault. Not directly at it but close enough. This marker is less than 30 feet from the vault. So this will hopefully show that not only do the wash banks hold storages, the vaults can be located on a wagon or burro trail up high on the hill and/or mountain. It is time for me to explain something very important. The one thing I have been preaching on this entire time is how markers need to be standalone, or in some way stand out from everything else around them. There are different ways to find these singular markers among all the thousands of carvings at a site. 1. Compression. This was accomplished by using a telescope that was looked through in reverse, creating a compression image of the mountain, which allowed for a large image that is hidden within the camouflage of all the other markers to become a recognizable smaller image by deleting all the distractions around it. In some cases you can only see the image in this way. This is easy to accomplish today by using a thumbnail of your pictures on your computer. I use the large thumbnail a lot. 2. They used a single or a few shadows to point the way to go, which you will see at the last shadows of the morning or the first shadows of the late afternoon. Many will be images, others are just simple arrows or pointers. The less shadows the better. 3. They used a hole to view an important marker by looking through it. Another way to use the hole is to align with another marker to go to an important spot. 4. A different color was added, usually black, that would draw your attention to a specific marker or area to look at. 5. They used an animal image or some other type of image that they knew was specifically related to finding the treasure, which would turn you out of a wash, or to a wagon or burro trail, turning you in the direction of the treasure. 6. The marker is all by itself. If you see a large boulder away from the hill, alone, it's an important treasure marker. Sometimes you will see two boulders together at the base of a mountain. This is a very good treasure marker also. 7. A singular lit-up rock, that draws you to the mountain it is on looking for a more important marker. I have shown examples of all of these already. So the idea and goal here is to find only the markers that relate to treasure, by knowing where you need to be standing and how to single out the important ones. Many markers that I have shown that are long-distance treasure markers give absolutely no directions whatsoever. Some of the directions were understood, or just on a map, and not in the field at all. So now that I am getting into the closer markers, all of that is going to change. From now on all the markers will not only relate to treasure, but will give a direction as well. A final note on the subject: those of you still stuck thinking every carving and/or marker that you see is an important marker, there is nothing I can do to help you out. It took me years of work to figure out which markers mattered and which ones are pure graffiti, or distractions, or enticers, which 99% of the carvings are exactly that. Since I have already talked about the storage turtle head, now I am going to talk about the full-bodied turtle. The turtles really do lead to the treasure areas, but some are just a trail guide, meaning that not all turtles are in the immediate vicinity of a treasure. I have a turtle that is the size of a small house in a large wash, and it is simply telling you to turn up another wash off the main wash by looking in the direction of the offshoot wash. The turtles can be huge, but this generally means they are quite some distance from the treasure, or at least not within a mile of the treasure. Here is a turtle that is seen from the wash that is simply marking an area with a treasure. This turtle does not look in the direction of the treasure. Some do. There are other markers for that which you will look for when you get near the turtle. One such marker is yet another saguaro sentinel triangle, circled in the left of the picture. This turtle is looking right at a storage less than 30 feet away. Notice how the turtle head looking left is actually a human profile face looking upwards as well. Both the turtle and the face are sharing the same eye. This incorporation of multiple markers is a pretty common occurrence. This turtle is less than 10 feet from the dig spot. He is looking slightly off from it, but very close. This turtle was designed more as a turning marker. It tells you as you walk up to it, viewing it just like in the picture, you turn to the right to go towards the treasure, the same way he is looking. Here is a sentinel turtle that goes in the direction of the spot to dig at less than 20 feet away. This is another turtle meant to be seen from this angle. You walk up to it then turn left towards the treasure. Other markers pinpoint these caches as well, but the turtles can get you very close, if not right on the spot. I will be covering more turtles that go to storages in a bit. I want everybody to understand visually what the dig spots should look like, as well as the relationship of the turtles that I have shown to the dig spots. Here is a picture of a turtle I've already shown, and like I said in that narration, he is less than 10 feet from the dig spot. The dig spot is marked by the drawn pentagon. The second circle on the far right is a Spanish carved rock pentagon, showing this as a holy treasure. The dead log that you see was moved off the dig spot by me, but it was placed on top of the dig spot by the Sentinels so they could find the spot again easily. Also, if they saw the log was moved, they knew somebody had been messing with it. The drawn pentagon is the spot to dig. The sentinel turtle, closest to the camera, is less than 20 feet from the dig spot. This is not the way to pinpoint the treasures. There is a much better way which I will be discussing soon. Here I will be showing shadow signs to a very large accumulation room that multiple mines have contributed to, making it a land depot for pickup, which still has millions of dollars worth of treasure inside of it to this day. I am going to be showing some of the same markers as before, to make the story more complete. Here is a lit sign, circled, that you can see from at least 5 miles away. This is seen at dawn's first light, in the middle of winter. The pentagon I drew on the mountain is where the storage is. Here is the king's throne on the ridgeline marking and telling us this is the king's accumulation storage depot. I marked the area of the treasure with a pentagon. This statue of Jesus I have shown several times, and is up high on this mountain. I will show its location on the mountain in the next picture. This is an overall picture of shadow markers looking at the treasure, which is marked with the pentagon. The shadows on this picture were the last shadows of the morning, during the fall equinox. However, Catching shadow images can be any time of the year depending on which way the mountain is situated to the sun. Shadow signs are viewed at the last shadows of the morning, midday, and the first shadows of the evening, the fewer the better. It is very important, especially about shadow and light markers, what the time of day is. Important as well is the time of year, in many cases, for these images to look correct. The gold rectangle at the top middle left of the picture is Jesus Christ in his rightful place up high. He is most definitely looking down towards the treasure. You cannot see him from this angle at all. Look at the last picture to see his profile from the angle he was meant to be seen. The green square at the top middle of the picture is a phoenix head profile, looking to your left, with a lit-up eye, and lit-up beak, and the head itself is a shadow. The symbolism of the phoenix comes from the idea that it really never dies. It is related to Jesus in the respect that, just as the phoenix rises from the ashes, so did Jesus from his death. The yellow square is a simple hand with a finger pointed to the treasure. In the green square above the orange rectangle, is a running man going to the right. If you notice his feet are on a very good trail going over the hill to the campsite, this is the fast trail, and the only shadow not pointed towards the accumulation room. In the orange rectangle is an Indian. Notice his feather sticking up pointed at the running man, but he is looking in the direction of the treasure. In the far right, the blue rectangle is a bear profile looking towards the treasure. It has just his head and front left leg showing. Down and to the left from the bear is the plum purple rectangle. It is the devil. I showed this picture before also. Notice his horns and tattered cape? You will notice a small shadow line going left from the devil to another shadow in the light purple rectangle. This shadow looks like Snoopy sitting up but is actually the devil's hellhound. Notice he has a forked tail. I have seen the devil and hellhound together at other sites. The brown square just under the hellhound's mouth connected by another shadow line is a simple arrow pointed over to the treasure also. I saved the best for last. The red square is an owl, and it is important to understand that the owl is always related to a treasure storage room. There are other shadows that point over in the direction of the treasure, but I wanted to name the ones that formed recognizable images. While standing at the treasure vault area, the side of the owl, in the red square in the previous picture and now in the black circle, is a major marker going to the treasure. This owl marker is side hill from the treasure. Many markers are side hill and horizontal, think level or same elevation, as the treasure, or straight uphill and straight downhill in relation to the slope of the hill from the treasure, think plumb bob. Here is what I found when I got close, a couple of sentinel cairns, with diamond tops, that aligned to the spot to dig. These two diamond cairns were aligned exactly 60 degrees on the compass, in the direction of the arrow I drew. Now for the skeptics wondering how in the world I could possibly know that this is such a large treasure vault. Well, besides all the shadows pointing it out, as well as all the carved markers marking this huge vault, I have one overwhelming piece of evidence, which of course I verified with the markers. My mom and dad were on their way home from this area back in 2000, when my mom decided to take one last picture of this mountain with a Canon film camera. It was almost dark out, she loved taking pictures, and she lucked out and caught this image. This is an aura coming from the treasure, its location is marked with the pentagon. I still have the original photo and scanned it into the computer. Before asking what the red spot is, I do not know. What I do know is the treasure is right where I marked it in the pentagon. The point here is that even though these shadow signs point in the direction of the treasure storages, they do not pinpoint it. That's something I will be showing soon. Hope you all are enjoying and learning. Thanks for watching so far, there is a lot more to come. Auras are most definitely real, but very hard to capture, as they only last less than a second, faster than lightning and faster than a person can see. The sun puts out sporadic radiation. The radiation rarely hits the same area more than once. This radiation bounces off the processed metals in the ground and shows as a photon burst on the ground. The problem is you have to capture the aura in a picture while you are shooting at the treasure, and the sporadic radiation happens to be hitting and or bouncing off the treasure at the exact split second that you are taking the shot. Not easy. The auras do not normally look like the one I showed but much smaller flashes. This is due to the fact that most are taken in the middle of the day, in full sunlight. I will be showing one more soon, the normal type. In order to capture an aura you have to take thousands of pictures. The auras are best caught in the full bright sunlight, however the camera needs to be at 90 degrees to the sun to prevent a light prism effect. In other words, don't shoot towards the sun, and every once in a while you will capture one, if you are lucky, and are shooting where there are very few trees, and at a mountainside that has more than one treasure buried to increase your odds of catching an aura. This is a very unreliable way to find treasure. These auras are not at all easy to catch, and does not work for trying to catch one single treasure. In other words, you can't zoom in on one single treasure expecting to catch an aura from it. You need a large section of mountain with multiple treasures on it in thousands of pictures to have any chance of catching just one aura, but it absolutely does work. And it is nice to have confirmation that the treasure is still in the ground or not. Even so, once you get to the aura area, you have to know how to use the markers as well, to pinpoint where to dig. You guys will have to trust me on this aura information. I do know what I am talking about on this subject. Aura capturing is something I have been working on for 20 plus years now, starting with the old Polaroid SX70, and testing every kind of camera since. I am the originator of this method of treasure hunting. Other people have caught accidental auras over the years from a distance. However, I am the first person to ever actually relate the long-distance auras successfully to multiple treasures. Since we are on auras, I am going to show what you will find at the aura site, that is if you happen to be lucky enough to capture one. Many auras have a small bit of black mixed with the white color. This first picture is a treasure aura, circled. This is your standard size aura, and is marking a silver cache. The reason I know this is silver is because when you catch an aura that has gold buried, it will be a golden color, which I will be showing when I get to another type of marker. I got lucky and happened to catch this aura taking a picture of the mountain. This second picture is the same picture I posted before, which has the turtle, log, carved pentagon and other markers I have not shown yet, that pinpoint this dig spot. The aura in the last picture is a photon radiation burst that is bouncing off the treasure in this second photo, which has these markers to it. There is an old wagon trail going right up to this spot. Remember, even if you do catch an aura and find markers at the aura site, you still have to know how to use the markers to pinpoint the dig spot, which I will be showing how to do soon. The next marker I would like to talk about is another aura, and a snake eating something. The first picture is of a gold aura. The reason it is blurry is because it was taken a mile from the mountain and cropped down to just this area. The second picture is a close-up of this aura area, and the aura spot is marked with the drawn pentagon. At the top of the picture is a snake head eating a heart. Notice how this marker is straight uphill from the aura spot, and is a standalone marker? I will be talking about the heart very soon. The snake can be eating anything, but if the snake is eating something, it represents the entrance to the treasure. I will be showing more on the snake as we go. A couple of lessons for the young trusting people out there. In treasure hunting, stories really are a dime a dozen. The proof is in pictures or real life. Many people claim to own pictures that are really not theirs. This is from my own personal experience of people claiming my pictures were originally taken by them. It happens a lot more than you might think. Every picture I have posted, unless otherwise stated, I, identifying as Sandy1, the originator of this post, or my family took, and are 100% authentic, not photoshopped in any way. Here is a good piece of advice. There are a lot of treasure hunters that tell a good story out there, that will take your money and promise they can find a treasure within a week. I have seen many of them hired and not one ever accomplished what they said they could do. The big question here is, what does a successful treasure hunter need with your hard-earned money? The reality is that a person who is a successful treasure hunter usually doesn't want to be known. For the people having a hard time seeing the images, here are a few pointers. The best way to view any carved animal at a treasure site is to always look for the eye, and/or eyes and mouth, or beak first. If there is no eye, mouth, or beak, then look for the general shape or outline, such as ears, nose, and/or body. This is especially true in whole outlines and shadows. Most animal shapes are just the heads when you get close to the entrance. Other than the turtle. Some animals that have a full body will be pointing out a direction to go with its head, or eyes, or beak. If you go back over my posts, you will notice that the ducks, hummingbirds, and many of the turtles with full bodies, are looking in the direction of the treasures, not directly at it. Not all full-bodied turtles are looking in the direction to go. I will be showing another way they are used shortly. Now that we have left the trail markers, it is time to start showing alignments. These alignments are how you pinpoint the spot to dig. This is a shaft sign symbol, which is one of the final markers to the treasure and/or shaft. This shaft sign is made up of two parallel lines that are angled, in the middle of the black circle. These can be just a squared U, or a long squared U, but the two sides will always be parallel and in this form, will be within a couple 100 feet of the treasure. There are squared U's viewed from a long distance as well that are not for pinpointing, which I had posted before. This particular shaft sign is also an alignment. The two tops align as I have shown with the red arrow going up the hill left, measured from the left peak in the picture, not measured with the slope of the hill, but holding the tape level. This alignment, the red arrow, goes to the spot to dig at exactly 82.5 feet, which is 30 varas. Because the measurement is in varas, this proves it is Spanish. The distance is not given to you by the alignment rocks, or anything carved on them. That will be the last thing that I will be discussing, to bring it all together for you. Here is a picture of the back side of the same pointed rock, left peak, in the last picture. Notice how it is in the shape of an A-frame? These A-frame pointed rocks are the first thing to look for at a treasure site, as they are very common for the alignments to the dig spot. This is just the first of many different types of alignment rocks and boulders, that I will be showing that go to different dig spots. Here are 3 examples of a snake eating something, and each one of these are most definitely related to 3 individual treasures. This first snake head eating the heart has already been explained as to how it relates to the treasure, straight downhill to the treasure. This second snake head coming up out of the ground is actually eating a rabbit. You cannot see the rabbit from this side, only the opposite side. This particular boulder is also one of 2 boulders used as an alignment and is 135 feet straight uphill to the spot to dig. This last snake head is eating something, not sure what, but is within feet of a treasure. This one is interesting because if you do a compression image on this entire picture, make it into a large thumbnail on your computer, you will notice that this snake's open mouth is actually the right eye, your left in the picture, of a much larger snake or dragon head with his mouth open looking right at you. Also, if you look down and left, you will see the A-frame pointed alignment rock. It has a small white X on it, that is used for the alignment to this treasure. You will find many snakes around an area with closed mouths, and some with just an open mouth, not eating. These do not go to the treasures, just more graffiti and/or enticers. However, having snakes in your area definitely are a good sign that you're in a good area. Here is a shadow snake with his mouth open, not eating anything at the moment. However, in this next picture, which was just a half hour later, as I recall, you will notice that where the snake's mouth was open, has now transformed into an upside-down lit-up heart. Now for the interesting part, this just happens to be on the very same pointed rock I posted before, which was our shaft sign going 30 varas, straight uphill, to the spot to dig, aligned in this picture. Another very important piece of information, that will keep everybody from wasting a ton of time at a treasure site. I have mentioned this before, but wanted to put it in pictures, in this location, as it pertains to this step of the hunt. 99% of the markers that are carved at a treasure area are nothing more than enticers, and/or camouflage, that try to draw you away from the treasures and into digging a false hole, possibly a death trap, or to hide the important markers among all the graffiti. Here is a boulder with many important carvings, images and symbols on it. This picture is the entire boulder, which happens to be a sleeping turtle. Turtles are related to treasures. This next one is a duck head, again another important storage marker. Here is the eagle head, and just like the phoenix and hummingbird, the eagle has to do with immortality and the resurrection of Christ. Next is the priest's head with cap, again showing this is an important marker. Here we have an elephant's head. These are 2-in-1 faces. In the circle is a skull looking at you with both eyes, and the skull's right eye, your left in the picture, is also the left eye of an owl's half face, your right in the picture, which I have marked the owl's beak, and the side of its face. The owl marks the storages, and the skull represents Golgotha, the place where Jesus was crucified, the Calvary. This is a view down on the top of this boulder, and there is a heart, circled in red, and triangle, circled in black, carved in it, which both have to do with treasure in their own ways. There are more images than what I have marked, but these are the important ones that have to do with treasure. These images also prove that they were carved by Europeans, since it has a priest, and an elephant on it. The lion with a full mane says the same thing, European and/or African. While this is a very important boulder, not a single one of these images gives a clue as to distance or direction, but they sure will lead you all over the place if you think that you're supposed to read and follow these images. The most important thing about this boulder is that it stands alone, and stands out, as there are no other boulders around it that are of the same color. This is what drew me to it before I ever saw any of the signs on it. These particular carved treasure signs are just verifying that this boulder is important. I will be showing how to follow this important boulder, marker a little later. Now that we have verified that this boulder has pretty much every good treasure marker, and holy sign, it's a pretty safe bet that we need to use it in some way to get to the dig spot. So the next step is to figure out how to use this boulder. What I do is walk back at a distance, 30 feet, and look all the way around it to see if there is an image of a rabbit with his ears laid down looking left or right. If you happen to spot this image, then you know two things: which side of the boulder the treasure is on, and also where to look behind it for another alignment boulder. The reason you will know these things is because the rabbit on these large alignment boulders can only be seen if you are either at the dig spot, or on the line between the rabbit and the dig spot. So when you spot the second boulder, which can be at any distance within sight of the rabbit boulder, you will line these two boulders up, line of sight, one centered behind the other, and walk backwards away from the rabbit, keeping these two in alignment until... Well, I am not quite to that part yet, I'm saving that for the end. These two boulders can be any shape or size. These alignment markers can be anything: two trees with markings on them, two saguaros the Sentinels planted, a couple of 100-pound rocks, or two cairns. Anything really does mean anything in a pair of two. This includes mismatches such as a 10-foot saguaro and a 2-foot one in an alignment, or a boulder and a saguaro, not many trees where I am at. Another thing, many trees, stumps, saguaros, etc., are planted near boulder markers that are important as an eye-catcher, to more easily find the important boulder. This rabbit boulder is just one type of alignment to look for and is on the large holy treasures. I will be showing many different types of alignment markers as we go. This first picture is of the rabbit seen from the dig spot, the same boulder I've shown before with all the signs and symbols. This second picture is of the rabbit, and the boulder that it aligns with. The drawn line is the line of sight back to where I am standing, the dig spot. This line of sight is centered on the two boulders, which happens to go right over the heart, and triangle, on the top of the rabbit boulder. I am re-showing the snake eating the heart picture, with 3 added markers. The black rectangle is the snake eating the rabbit on opposite side. The green rectangle is a really good fox head. You can just see its head and nose shape from this angle. We will be getting into foxes shortly. The red rectangle is a crocodile. This is an absolute treasure marker. It will point and/or look in the direction to go, when alone. Sometimes, it is part of, or right next to, one of the two alignment boulders. Just like in this case where the crocodile is being looked at by the fox and is right next to the rabbit, being eaten by the snake. Here is the opposite side of this boulder, and as I mentioned, this is the side you should be viewing the rabbit from to be on the line between the treasure and the rabbit image. You can't see the second large alignment boulder, as it is behind the tree, but I am right online taking this picture. The tail of the rabbit is the top of the snake's mouth, eating him. You can just see the crocodile's nose just under the nose of the rabbit. The snake, the fox, and the crocodile all represent evil. So we have a holy boulder and now an unholy one. Both of them have a rabbit and they both go to separate treasures. The plot thickens. As we continue around this alignment boulder, we find a shaft sign on the far side from the dig spot of this rabbit boulder. The shaft sign and rabbit boulder are circled. Looking through this shaft sign, we notice how there is a stop rock behind the shaft sign. This means you are not supposed to look past the stop rock while looking through this shaft sign in this direction. Here I am showing a different type of alignment which is going through the shaft sign and rabbit boulder from the last photo. Moving a few more feet to the right from the last photo, we find that the middle of this shaft sign aligns with the rabbit boulder to go in the direction straight up the hill to the dig spot, which just happens to be magnetic north on the compass, taking into account declination change over the centuries. Here is yet another way to use the shaft sign, circled in red. I have also circled a rock to the right of it. When you view through the last photo's shaft sign, the red arrows pointing down are each side boulder of the shaft sign. You will see the rock I circled in black in the last photo, as well as a heart it is aligned with, circled in red. Here is a close-up of the shaft alignment rock aligning with the heart rock. After searching around the heart rock we find another standing rock that is 3 varas or 8¼ feet from it. This is the alignment that is used to go to the dig spot. The distance from the heart rock to the dig spot is exactly 77 feet. The black arrow is showing how we came to the heart rock from looking through the shaft sign. The red arrow points to the dig spot. The heart is circled in blue. So if you find a shaft sign, make sure to look through it to see if you find an alignment boulder, or even in some cases an arrow rock, turning you towards a more important boulder. I am going to show a couple of random fox heads so you guys will have a good idea of what they will look like. The fox is at a whole lot of these treasure sites. They do not point the way to go, but in many cases are a part of a cluster of boulders that you will need as an alignment point, many times associated with the snake and crocodile just like in a previous picture's green rectangle, or even as one of the alignment points. In other cases just point at another important marker. Here are 2 fox heads found near treasures within 100 feet. If you find a fox head you are very close to a treasure area and it's time to start looking for those alignment boulders and/or rocks. Now it's time to revisit the alignment shaft sign. The alignment A-frame is actually a part of a cluster of signs, which is the boulder to the right of it. Now, I am going to show what happens as we walk around this boulder. This next picture of the fox head is actually visible in the last photo but is distorted until I move to the right a few feet. Until we are in the front of the nose of the fox, we find that the fox has transformed into a crocodile head and there is a lightning bolt right below it, which are all very evil signs, meaning death. Then, as we continue right, we finally come to the alignment, and the shadow snake. Here is what the shadow snake is eating a half hour later, the upside-down lit-up heart, and, if you look to the left of the heart, you will see that there is a shadow fox looking at the heart. Look for his ears sticking up and nose pointing to your right. Then, as we continue to the right, around this cluster of markers, we come to the shaft sign. You can see that they used all sides for markers, in some cases however most are two-dimensional. These 2 clusters of markers I have shown go to 2 large holy church treasures within a half mile of each other, with death traps. I have shown this panel complete with light and shadow signs, so you guys can understand how to read the signs, as well as how these particular signs and symbols are connected to the alignments and to the spot to dig. I am one of the very few people in the world who knows how these things work, and what to look for on a marker. Through knowledge and experience you can be too. Each site has many different enticers, meaning that there can always be more than just one of the same kind of marker that are completely bogus, certain markers more than others. The one this most often occurs with is the heart, which I will be discussing soon. This is why you always need to verify the spot to dig, which is what I will be explaining towards the end. These bogus enticers, that are markers you normally would use, are part of what I was talking about. 99% of markers are just enticers, and/or camouflage and are meant to keep you digging in false holes, or death traps. This is why I am showing individual standalone boulders as the markers. The markers that they really needed to use stand out and are verified with the certain images that I have been showing, and, most importantly verified in the last way, which is what I have not discussed yet. Now I am going to be showing some more simple alignments. The distances will not be necessary at this point, however all of these are within 100 feet of the dig spot. These are so you have an idea of what the alignment rocks, and/or boulders look like for reference of what you can expect to see in the field and an idea of how far a lot of these smaller ones are apart from each other. Here is another pointed type of rock that aligns with a line on the rock behind it to the dig spot, which is where I am taking the picture from. This is the same marker as in the last photo, but I got down low enough to align the pointed front rock and the line on the back rock. This is going to a completely different treasure, and on this particular alignment boulder you will see a shaft sign, the long squared U, with parallel sides, left of the sunlight. Here is the same boulder as the last photo, but shows the second alignment boulder marked behind it, back in the shadows, centering the 2 with line of sight. If you look at this in a smaller image, such as a thumbnail, you will realize how pointed this close rock really is, notice how the back boulder has 2 saguaros on either side of it. These were planted and are for marking the back rock, so it's easier for the sentinels to find. Other times there is no point on the alignment markers at all, such as these two, which are both saying something. The back one is a shaft sign, that we are aligning with the front one, which is a turtle. Notice his rock head on the right, and the line is going right over this turtle's shell. This is another way to use a turtle to get to the dig spot. Again, notice how there is a sentinel planted saguaro next to the back rock, to make the back rock easier to locate. I am including another picture of the turtle in the last photo so you can see him better, as well as the shaft sign behind him. This picture is slightly off alignment to the dig spot. The sentinels plant all kinds of things that help relocate the old important markers. They also will cut off a tree just a few feet tall to make a stump as an eye catcher for an important, flat, or hard-to-see rock marker that is very close by. They also use different color trees for this purpose. Always be on the lookout for anything out of the ordinary. Even if it is an enticer, it is probably close to a treasure area. These alignments are in many shapes and sizes. I will be showing more as we go along. Here are a few more alignments that go to dig spots. This first one, I am at the dig spot taking the picture, is just a simple alignment that seems innocent enough, but when I get towards the end you will realize how important it and all the others alignments really are. Here is another alignment that is mostly hidden by the trees. The back rock is very large and has another rock that is sitting on it, which was placed with its right edge on the line, for an eye catcher, which is the center of the large boulder hidden by the trees. These two I marked are aligned and coming to where I am standing at another dig spot. Here is an interesting one because, if you guys remember the duck that was back in the wash, which I said turned left, and went to an alignment boulder, well this boulder is the one it went to. So we fast forward and here I am standing at the dig spot, shooting back at the alignment boulder in the last photo, the closest one, and the one that it aligns with very close behind it, and up on the hill, way behind these, is an eye catcher, dark, to draw your attention to this line, which just happens to be 45 degrees on the compass. As I was saying, these can be any size or shape and most of the time will be within 200 feet of the dig spot. There are rare exceptions. I am showing something that should get you thinking about the sentinels. These 2 saguaros were planted not long before I took this picture and aligned to a dig spot. The red arrow points to the dig spot. These 2 saguaros are exactly 33 feet apart. Here are the 2 small sentinel planted saguaros from the last photo aligned to the dig spot. The compass is on the dig spot. I have seen even newer saguaros planted at other treasure sites. So the sentinels are definitely still active, are monitoring and remarking these treasure sites across the entire US still to this day, not just here in Arizona. Here is a different type of sentinel alignment, from a previous picture. The saguaro is aligned through the shell of the turtle to the dig spot, in the direction of the drawn arrow. The saguaro and turtle are exactly 66 feet apart. This is the same picture as the last photo, but it is aligned, and includes the dig spot, which is exactly 33 varas from the saguaro, or 90 3/4 feet. The compass is on the dig spot. It has come time to explain how to use and how not to use the carved heart. Many people have found these hearts everywhere, and if you do, this is a great sign that you are near a treasure area. In case you guys have missed the entire theme that I have been talking about with these animals, signs, symbols, it pretty much goes like this: holy, evil, death, then resurrection, and much of it has to do with Jesus Christ. My understanding of the heart is that it is Jesus's heart and is found where the symbolized tomb of Jesus is located, which is the treasure tomb as well, because Jesus is the treasure. There are a couple types of hearts. One is a trail heart, which is standing or propped up, not laying flat on the ground. These trail hearts can be seen from washes, or on the trails, and are simply saying you're on the right trail, just keep on going. These types of hearts are not close to the treasure, unless they are sentinel made. Also, these standing hearts generally have other rocks around them that point out a direction to go. Sometimes they are flat, laying down, on the trail to the treasure area as well. The Spanish, as well as the priests, all knew that people trying to steal their treasures would be looking for the heart to lead them to the treasures, and anybody finding the heart would dig wherever the heart pointed to. So of course this was taken advantage of, and these hearts were scattered everywhere near a treasure. These individual hearts are not to be followed as they can easily lead you into a death trap, or at the very least a false enticer hole that will keep you busy digging away from the treasure. These individual enticer hearts are buried markers as well, and again will lead you all over the place, except to the entrance, that is. Here is your typical individual loose and movable heart that will be laying scattered on top of the ground around a treasure area. This heart is about 100 feet from the dig spot, but since this heart gives us no direction whatsoever, we do not follow it, even though it could be just feet from the entrance. These hearts can be the size of a small car at some old sites, or as small as a few inches, and they will come in all kinds of colors, white, red, black, etc. However, none of that matters. When I get to the important hearts, you will understand why. All that really matters with the heart is that its presence shows you are either in a treasure area, or on the trail to a treasure area. A while back I got lucky and caught another aura. Here is the aura. This is cropped way down, as I was a good mile from the mountain taking this picture. So I went to this spot looking for markers, and right away I found a heart, very close to the aura. Here is the heart. But then, I found something completely unexpected. I found a tailing pile at the aura spot, with a bunch of branches from a Palo Verde tree laying on the tailings. Here is the aura spot marked with the pentagon and the heart from the last photo, marked with a red circle. So, somebody else had been digging on this treasure before I ever got there. More on the hearts. We have a couple here that are oddballs in a way. They tell us there is a treasure in the immediate area, but don't exactly pinpoint it. This heart is an oddball because it is a heart in a snake's mouth, and it is directly uphill from a treasure, shown in number 35's last two pictures. This heart is only used because it's in the snake's mouth, verifying that the snake and heart are to be used. This last heart is actually marking the place to dig by pointing at it with its tip. But since there are a whole lot more loose and movable hearts laying around that you could think the same thing about, this one or any others like it are not to be followed at all. The drawn pentagon is the dig spot. As a side note, it makes absolutely no difference if the heart is upside down, or any other direction. The reason, in many cases, the heart is upside down, is because the pointed tip is used as an alignment peak. I have shown hearts that are not to be used in the field, due to the fact that there is no way to get a correct direction from them. Guessing on which way to go from a heart marker is a good way to waste a huge amount of time and effort. So now it is time for us to look at hearts you will be using. This first picture is a standalone heart, and absolutely would never be used under normal circumstances. But, upon closer examination, we find something interesting. This heart is not just laying on top of the ground, it is mostly buried, meaning somebody wanted it to stay in one place. The only reason something is made permanent, especially a treasure marker, is because its location is important and only works if not moved. Notice the black area on the heart's left side. So, we look around this heart and find another rock that is mostly buried nearby it, which interestingly enough has an A-frame carved on it, circled. At this point we no longer have just a heart, but also an A-frame alignment rock. So we put these two together and we get an alignment, which is a line of sight, to follow from the tip of the A-frame, through the center of the heart, going to the dig spot. Two things to notice: the A-frame is only visible from the dig spot, but the heart is not. You can match the angle of the heart with the black area on it in the first picture and see how we are viewing the heart from the side. Now for the entire picture. The A-frame aligned through the heart to the dig spot, marked with the pentagon. This picture is not on the line, so I drew a line for the alignment to the dig spot. In other words, other markers point the way to go, but not the heart. While the A-frame is carved on the back rock or boulder, what is really important is that the entire rock or boulder is standalone. The one thing I have tried to show is that each one of these alignment rocks and or boulders are standalone. Here is a sentinel placed heart that is just a few feet from the dig spot. This is a single heart that I would normally never look at twice, but I found a reason to look at it again, after looking at and past it from the dig spot. Here is what I saw when I looked past the heart from the dig spot. The heart is circled, the water bottle is marking the dig spot, two aligned sentinel planted seguaros going right to the dig spot. Notice how these are two different sizes, each one was planted many years apart. The back seguaro is 111 feet from the dig spot and originally was aligned with the heart. Then many years later, the closer saguaro was added to make the alignment easier to find. 2 saguaros, instead of a heart and saguaro, are easier to find and match each other. The only single hearts that are used to give a direction, not attached to another animal, marker, cluster, or pointed out by another marker such as a shaft sign, are alignment hearts. Any others are not to be trusted to give a direction. It's time for me to explain the big secret about distances. The first thing to understand is that you don't measure until after you find the dig spot. You're probably scratching your head on that one. The best way for me to explain this is for everybody to think of themselves as standing on a giant flat analog clock. You are in the dead center of the clock hands, and each one of the alignments, at least 3 alignments, are on different times, at different distances. The reason for this is because all these alignments crisscross back to where you are standing in the middle, which is the dig spot. In other words, all the projected lines from multiple alignments are crisscrossing each other at just one spot, the dig spot. These alignments can be any distance, but a maximum of 600 feet at the furthest and all the way down to 3 varas, 8 feet, 3 inches, to the dig spot. Most are within 100 feet. If you want more info on each alignment, you can go back and read up on each one's individual information. Now for the examples. These are going counterclockwise and all taken from the dig spot, staying on the dig spot, as I am turning in one spot, taking a picture of each alignment. Think of 12 noon or midnight as north. Every one of these alignments go to the same dig spot. 1A is at 9:30 a.m. The closest of these 2 boulders is a large heart from number 43's last 4 pictures. 1B. This is the same alignment as the last photo including the dig spot. The compass is on the dig spot. 2A is at 8:30 a.m. This is the shaft sign and alignment peaks. Notice how this heart should be followed as it is part of the alignment. 2B. This second picture is of the same alignment boulders as the last photo, but I am showing the dig spot as well. The water bottle circled but barely in the picture is on the dig spot. 3 is at 7:30 a.m. This is the alignment with the eyes boulder, from number 47's last 3 pictures. The eyes boulder, circled in red, is the back alignment boulder, not the dark eye catcher way up and behind it on the hill. It is 213 feet from the dig spot to the eyes boulder. Sometimes you measure from the closest boulder, while other times you measure from the furthest boulder. The water bottle is marking the dig spot. 4A is at 7 a.m. This is the boulder with all the carvings all over it, from number 41, and the bunny you view from the dig spot. This is also the boulder that has the heart carved in the top of it, which you align to the dig spot. You can also see the alignment boulder from the last photo 3 at 7:30 a.m., up and to the right circled in blue, in both this picture and the last one. 4B. This second picture is the same as the last photo, but has the dig spot marked with the water bottle. 5A is at 5:30 a.m. This alignment is the heart with the A-frame rock behind it, again using the heart as an alignment. 5B. This is the same alignment as the last photo, but is showing the dig spot marked with the water bottle as well. 6A is at 4 a.m. These 3 saguaros, the right one is dead now, are actually a very old Mexican sentinel planted triangle, and they are planted straight uphill from the dig spot. This was mainly so they could find it easier, up high on the hill, but also because they liked putting markers vertical or horizontal to the dig spots, in relationship to the slope of the hill. The first picture I took offset from the alignment line so you can see the far saguaro behind the middle triangle saguaro. 6B. This second picture has the 2 saguaros aligned to the dig spot, marked with the water bottle. 7 is at 1 a.m. This is a Sentinal Seguaro alignment of 2 time periods. The dig spot is marked with the water bottle. 8 is at 11 p.m. This is another Sentinal Seguaro alignment that was planted by different generations of Sentinels. The dig spot is marked by the water bottle. The closest circled dark rock is also a heart. In this picture the drawn yellow pentagon is the crisscross dig spot. The orange lines are visual aids of all the projected lines from each one of the alignments to the crisscross and/or dig spot. I have made a 2D CAD drawing, or overhead view, of all 8 of the alignments from above to give a better understanding of how this was laid out. The black circles are rocks and boulders, the green are saguaros. The measurements that are important are marked out, only one is in varas, the 30 V, the rest are in English feet. Generally there is only one good distance or measurement needed from only one of the two alignment boulders or cactus, which can be from either the closest or the farthest one from the dig spot. The arrows point to the segment between the marker and the dig spot that I had measured. Some are measured from the farthest markers all the way back to the dig spot, while some are from the closest markers to the dig spot. The dig spot is the center red circle, where all of the alignments crisscross each other. This is a different angle of the same crisscross dig spot, an older picture from when I first found it. This dead ocotillo was placed there by the Sentinels, and this small saguaro cactus was also planted by the Sentinels going to the dig spot and is aligned with a 12-foot cactus, shown in 7's 1 AM alignment above. The small saguaro is going to this dig spot at exactly 13 feet. It was put there not long before I took the picture. So as you can see, and like I've said, Sentinels are still marking these treasures, even to this day. Now I am showing a different crisscross dig spot with the alignments going to it, counterclockwise again. 1 is at 1 p.m. 2 is at 11 a.m. 3 is at 10 a.m. Here is the dig spot that all three of these alignments crisscross at. I marked the turtle in blue, the heart in red, the carved pentagon in black, and the crisscross dig spot is the yellow pentagon. Originally the log was over this spot, placed there by Sentinels. This second picture is another visual aid, with the orange lines, showing how the alignments came into this crisscross dig spot. As an added bonus, I am including a close-up of what was left by the Sentinels on the crisscross dig spot. This circle of rocks with the one in the middle. Here is another CAD drawing of this last crisscross dig spot to help understand how some of the measuring was done. All are in English feet except for the 30 varas on the right. Each arrow is pointing to the segment of line between rocks, or between the dig spot and a rock, measuring each segment independently of each other, in other words, not a continuous measurement from the farthest markers to the dig spot. The three circles that are together at the bottom represent the dig spot. Here is the easiest way to find the crisscross spot. Just find one alignment line and walk backwards, keeping the two rocks centered visually, until you find another two rocks, or questionable alignment, that crosses your first line visually, coming in from a different angle. You never know what type of alignment you're going to find. It's like I have been saying all along, they wanted to be able to relocate these treasures easily. On these two rock alignments, there is no set pattern at all, every one is different on the alignments. Other than the fact that I have never seen less than 3 alignments go to a dig spot and as many as 10 in one case. The best way to look for an alignment is to look at the base of the hill, because that is where they had to start also and would generally put their markers. So most times you will know which way to go, because you will be going up the hill. It's not because of one single marker that anybody would ever dig, or at least I would hope not. The only time that anybody should ever dig is because of multiple markers, all working together to find one single spot, the dig spot. There will always be what you think are markers that are really just erosion, or pareidolia, so until you find other markers to back the single one up, it is not verified, nor does it, as a single marker, mean much, even if it is a real marker. Many markers I have shown I would never have used as an independent marker. But I have hopefully shown that most of the markers that I've shown work in conjunction with many other markers, and never ever independently. When it comes to marker distances to different caches, after finding a few you will know what distances are used, such as 13 feet, 77 feet, 30 varas, and 15 varas. Those are all common numbers. These are just a few. 3 times a number is very common also, such as 3 times 13 equals 39, or 77 times 3 equals 231, etc. An interesting fact. I have shown 8 different treasure sites on here. What I have not told you guys is that I know of over 100 more of these treasures. These caches are scattered all over the place in the United States. So I hope many of the people who never took vault treasures seriously will realize, after what I have shown, that these treasures are not just fictitious stories, but actually do exist. The King of Spain at the time required anything over a certain amount, I'm not sure how much was considered a large cache, to be buried at a minimum depth of 30 feet, either straight down, or inside a tunnel. I do know that 400 silver bars were found straight down, vertically, in the ground, at a depth of 30 feet. 8 feet is pretty common for the smaller caches in the desert, because bedrock is so close to the surface, it's deeper when there is more dirt over the bedrock. 3 varas of dirt, just over 8 feet, has been dug up before even hitting the bedrock. They use the same alignments, but no death traps, in the small caches, therefore many of the markers that have to do with the death traps are not present at the small storages. The information about the vault storages cannot be taught, or compared to anybody else's dug-up vault storage because each dig spot is different. The same thing with the treasures, you never know what you're going to find. So comparing what you have dug up will never help anybody else to figure out their treasure site or dig spot. There is absolutely no way to tell people how deep or what size caprock will be found, if any at all. Besides, most people asking these types of questions are more interested in what you have dug up than what they are trying to find, and that will never turn out good for you. Remember, you have no reason to prove what you have found to anybody, but you have every reason not to prove what you have found. People will torture or kill you if they think you have gold, or know where it is buried, while others will turn you in because of jealousy, or because they are sentinels. Bad people will tell you they won't believe that you actually found treasure, even if you take them to the hole you dug, or show them pictures of the treasure. They will still want you to let them physically hold, and/or see, the treasure for themselves, saying this is the only real proof. That's when bad things happen to you, so, as I said before, you have no reason to show proof of the treasure to anybody, but every reason not to. Very important. Once your head is underground, that is when you need to be thinking about gravity death traps. Here is what we were digging when the wolf howled, back in number 23's second from last ghost story. The first picture is the first layer of wedge rocks, and the second is after pulling out the first, then many more wedge rocks, some had caliche clay, holding them together. We also found a small hole or niche with tiny rocks, perfectly cut, and fit in the side of this shaft, making the shaft wall perfectly flat. As far as the niche, all you could see was the outline, small crack, of a semicircle, until I swept and pulled out all the little cut rocks. At one time they had a statue in the niche which was about 2 feet deep in the shaft wall. Here is another one that we pulled a cap rock out of. Notice the shaft symbol carved in the wall. The cap rock was level with the top of this shaft sign. There is no standard size of the cap rocks, they can be in any shape and size, whatever was needed to cover the hole. Many small storages don't have cap rocks, just a hole with rocks and dirt. No 2 dig sites are the same. This is a far cry from what others have said about the caches being easy to spot and just haphazardly put together, with a rock exposed covering, or an opening that you could see above ground. The old BS meter hits red for me when I hear things like that. Every single one of the king's vaults were required to be inside of bedrock, and never visible from the surface. They will always be within 3 feet of the surface to the first cap rock, or marker, usually much closer. Something else I wanted to add. A lot of people think they can find these treasures if they have knowledge of mining. Nothing could be further from the truth. While some mines hold treasure, and mining areas always have at least one vault nearby, the depots where they accumulated treasure from many mines that were miles away, in the mountains, are different, because they did not want to go up into the mountains to get every little storage. These depots were meant to have easy access, so they were put in locations that were 1. Easy to find. Victorio Peak comes to mind, a standalone mountain that could be seen from miles around. 2. Easy to access, so they would not put the entrance way up on the peak of a mountain, but down low where they could get the wagons, or next to a major river, or tributary, on the banks, where they could easily follow it directly to the vaults. These depot locations were not chosen for their minerals, but for ease of spotting, and ease of access. So knowing mining is not a help at all in these situations. I made up a quick reference guide of treasure hunting signs and symbols. Animals and symbols that specifically relate to treasures, in order of what you would most likely find first. 1. The hole. 2. Lit up boulders or rocks on hillside. 3. The king's throne. 4. The large standalone boulder at base of hill or in wash. 5. The turtle and the storage turtle head. 6. The skull. 7. The eagle. 8. The owl. 9. The triangle. 10. The A-frame rock. 11. The heart. 12. The diamond. 13. The pentagon. 14. The snake eating something, open mouth. 15. The crocodile. 16. The fox. 17. The duck. 18. The rabbit. 19. The elephant. 20. the Hummingbird. 21, the number 3. 22, the Lion. 23, the Snail. 24, the A-frame cave with a single rock inside. 25, Sentinel planted or placed markers. These are last because they are only backups to the original Spanish and/or priests' markers. There has been volumes of misinformation published, and non-published, fed to the public about these markers, and even about the treasures themselves, made-up treasure tales. People have made a living on stories of treasures. All this misinformation has all but destroyed vault treasure hunting, and I am sure you guys can figure out who would gain the most from trying to mislead everybody by writing books. The point is that no book is going to give out the true and factual information like I have shown here, and for a good reason. The Sentinels have billions worth of treasure to lose. Anybody thinking that you're going to get the answers from people who wrote books, should think again. The reason the Sentinels do not dig up all these treasures is because it would take massive amounts of work and time, which would draw the attention of the public, and that is exactly what they don't want. The Sentinels have put a tremendous amount of time and effort into convincing the public that these treasures do not exist. Important. There are many gravity-operated death traps, with all kinds of enticers to get you to dig under different boulders. Which is why I warn everybody against digging on the side of cliffs. It's really not necessary when there are so many treasures on gentle slopes. Try to keep those big boulders from being over your head. Here is more important information: if you find a death trap above ground, there will never be treasure under it. The reason for this is because the entrance to the treasure cannot have anything marking it above ground. This is why they use alignments to a bare piece of ground for the entrance. The Sentinels may have marked it, but not the original Spanish and/or priests, and even then, only with subtle and natural marks. A Spanish death trap I dug up. After removing rocks from a shaft down to about 10 feet deep, we came across a small angled downward rock jutting out from the side of the shaft. This looked innocent enough, but was stuck in the shaft wall, so we decided to keep digging under it because there was man-made caliche clay that was packed under this small rock. Little did we know the small rock was a trigger rock. The way it worked is the smooth-surfaced top was angled down fairly steep on this trigger rock, and then when you dug the caliche clay out from under it, having your head down to dig, the small rock would drop a few inches. Once enough caliche clay was removed, then a huge boulder that was part of the wall of the shaft would slide down, on the small trigger rock, that just dropped a few inches, and crush your head like a grape against the opposite side of the shaft. Which, by the way, they made the opposite wall fit the angles of the deathtrap boulder perfectly. The only reason we escaped it was because, after digging under the trigger rock, we talked it over and decided to widen out the hole, and discovered the death trap purely by accident. That is how good they can make these things. You will never know it's there until it gets you. Death traps most definitely exist around major treasures. I cannot stress this enough. If you pop open a cap rock, and there is an entrance that is hollow below the cap rock, and you get a good whiff of the air from inside, at the very least this gas can make you sick, and at the most can kill you. I have been so sick, as well as my old partner, at some of these sites from the noxious gases that permeate even the ground. Then it gets much, much worse when you pop open an entrance. Let the whole air out well, don't rush in. If you start feeling sick to your stomach, that is the feeling when you breathe in this poisonous gas. If you leave the area, the feeling of nausea will go away in a half hour or so. One other thing to mention for those squeamish people: my partner was digging in a hole at a site and I saw something moving down the wall and reach off the wall to climb on his head. I yelled at him, and he swiped it off just in time. It was a centipede. We caught it, and took it home, stretched it out, and it was exactly a foot long. Not far from the centipede spot, we were digging and a giant ball of bees come across the desert right to where we were at. We jumped out of the hole and they finally went on their way. We were lucky we saw them just before they got to us. I had another friend who was digging a hole, when a whole bunch of scorpions crawled out up his shirt and stung him several times. I was at the doorway with the lightning bolt I showed on number 23, and found a hole in the ground. It was a man-made air shaft that was shaped like a diamond, with bees shooting out of it from air deep inside the hole. When I was digging in the Caballos Mountains in New Mexico, it was summer, and a big green Mojave rattlesnake crawled within 10 feet of us and went into a hole right next to where we were digging. I can just imagine the rattlesnake den that is in that vault, probably slithering in and out of every crevice and crack, Indiana Jones time, lol. This is not a job for the squeamish at all. I suggest using bug bombs in holes. A serious warning for everybody involved in treasure hunting who may have found something of value that is over 100 years old inside a man-made vault that you had to excavate. Never, ever, show anything on a public forum. My intent for this guide was to make it more informative than any book ever written on the subject of vault treasure hunting, and I believe I have accomplished that. Since this kind of treasure hunting has nothing to do with luck, I won't say good luck, but instead I will say this: if you give up on things easily, treasure hunting is not going to be worth your time. It is very hard work, but the rewards are better than you can imagine, and I am not just talking about the money, I mean enjoying the great outdoors. Getting some exercise. As well as the adventure, and knowing when you get to the end that you have accomplished something very few have accomplished before you. I hope you all enjoyed my guide to vault treasure hunting. Stay safe and aware. The end.